Your world has probably been influenced more by Swedenborg than you realize. Within and outside Christianity, he found a heaven that you did not have to be a Christian to go to, that living the life that Jesus prescribes, that will get you into a state of heaven, regardless of what faith tradition you follow in earnestly trying to do that.
It's such a disservice to humanity how modern Christianity has basically just made it so you could punch a ticket and go to heaven, because this takes constant prayer and vigilance and self-auditing, repentance, all of these things. We always talk about how an eternal hell of conscious torment does not serve God's glory whatsoever. If God has all knowledge, all power, so everything must serve some kind of utility, some type of purpose. So Swedenborg's model of hell makes perfect sense.
When you grow up in religion, you're constantly being told, hey, by joining our religion and joining our church, you have accepted all the correct truths of the universe. And all the other ones are flatly false and you should not investigate them. It's like, hey guys, you know there's millions of recorded NDEs of people all saying the exact same thing, basically. To where I would just think, shouldn't the case be closed at this point? But Swedenborg didn't quite have that luxury in his day. And yet he very much was espousing exactly what people say who've actually died and come back to talk about it. So it shows me he really was going to these afterlife realms, clearly. And he was really having these experiences he's describing and learning these things.
Swedenborg, he's a Christian reformer in a lot of ways. He actually said that there was a first age of Christianity that kind of has come to a close. But Swedenborg was very adamant that there was a new Christianity on the horizon that was going to really live the life that Jesus wanted us to do, and that was going to be something that really set the human race up for its best era yet. It'd be in our new Christian era.
Shalom Alachem, peace be with you, my friends, and welcome back to the Jesus Way podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Abke, joined alongside my co-host, Mr. James Benefico. And today we're joined by Mr. Curtis Childs. Curtis Childs is the host of Off the Left Eye, a YouTube channel dedicated to exploring the spiritual teachings of the 18th century mystic Emanuel Swedenborg in new, accessible, and contemporary ways. James and I have been a big fan of Curtis's channel for quite a long time now. And Curtis is a really engaging storyteller and has an ability to make complex theological concepts much more relatable. Curtis has also helped introduce thousands of people to Swedenborg's profound insights about the nature of God, the spiritual world, and the deeper meaning of Scripture as well. Through his work on the Swedenborg Foundation, Curtis bridges historical mysticism with modern spiritual seeking, making him the perfect guide to explore how Swedenborg's revolutionary ideas align with the Jesus Way philosophy. So Curtis, you had us on your channel about a month ago now, which was an absolute blast. And it is a pleasure to have you on our channel this time, brother.
Oh, it's so good to be back talking to the two of you. Thanks for having me on.
This kind of feels like a dream to me, because just a few years ago, these were two of my favorite YouTube channels. Aaron, Curtis, you both were instrumental in my spiritual journey. And now I'm sitting here doing a podcast with y'all. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Anything is possible.
You made it happen. Mm-hmm.
Made it happen. God made it happen. But for everyone listening, you are in for a real treat today. We're going to get into some of the most fascinating topics imaginable. The nature of heaven and hell, angels, demons, the purpose of life. Why are we here? We're going to touch all of the deepest questions of existence. And it's the reason I love Curtis's channel so much and the teachings of Swedenborg, because it gets away all the dogma, all the nonsense, and it cuts deep to really satisfying answers to some of the biggest questions in life.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. That's what we're here for. I mean, I didn't start talking about Swedenborg on the internet to try to be cool. There's no market for that. Right? Nobody knows what is that.
You're just trying to make money, Curtis.
It's like, yeah, like everyone's hopping on the bandwagon, the Swedenborg bandwagon. But
everybody's rocking with Swedenborg.
Like, who is the weirdest sounding name for this the obscure guy? But when you get in there, this is an absolute gift to modern Christianity. I mean, everything that when I got onto YouTube, it was just the new atheists running the table, pointing out all the absurdities of modern Christian theology. The internet was the place religion goes to die. And immediately being versed in Swedenborg, I knew, like, oh, this is all these questions and these, like, all the challenges people have with the Bible, with Christianity, there's answers to that. Even like the confluence of East and West, and like the inner meditation, a sort of be nothing, and that in Christianity, how do they get along? That I find these super rational, empowering answers in Swedenborg. So I'm trying to say, y'all missed this over here. Like, check it out, because I think it can turbocharge some of this modern Christian revival that's happening.
I couldn't agree more, man. I think, there's been some really amazing spiritual minds, since Jesus. But if I had to name like a top 5 or something in the last few centuries, it'd be, Rupert Sheldrake, William Blake, Rudolf Steiner for sure. And I would definitely put Swedenborg in the top 5, right? He's a true spiritual genius. He was a man who had very unconventional ideas that got him in a lot of trouble, as it does with anyone who has unconventional ideas. But yeah, as you're saying, he has so much to offer modern Christianity. And I think he was just way ahead of his time. So I'll pitch it to you, James, to kind of kick us off with your first question for Curtis.
Sure. Yeah. I'm so excited because our community, the Jesus Way community, it's for people who love God, but kind of their BS meter goes off when they hear some of the Christian theology. It's like, unfortunately, some churches, it's just like a check your brain at the door kind of thing. But with Swedenborg, it's the opposite. And with this Jesus Way philosophy we're promoting, it's rational. It stands up to dissection. So to start, Curtis, who the heck is Emanuel Swedenborg? Who's this Swedish guy with a weird name?
Yeah, I think that your world has probably been influenced more by Swedenborg than you realize. I mean, even when you were naming those people, Aaron, William Blake heavily influenced by Swedenborg, as well as Steiner. Wow. So Blake had his whole book that he wrote about. So Swedenborg, we just did an episode on our channel about Helen Keller and how Swedenborg totally shaped her philosophy. You go to the city of Chicago. It was laid out by Daniel Burnham based on the architecture of like cities of heaven. There's a John Chapman, better known as Johnny Appleseed in American folklore. He was a real guy. He was handing out Swedenborg's writings. You had it in we just did
Walter
an episode.
Russell.
So there's Carl Jung read Swedenborg extensively. So the influence, and then there's the if there's smoke, there's fire. Like the Bill Wilson who did the 12 Steps. His wife was a Swedenborgian, and Swedenborg had a vision of a temple in the afterlife with 12 steps of regeneration on it. We're not, he never said it was, but I think there's, obscure as Swedenborg is, and I think that he's rightfully earned that because it's dense enough and it's strange enough. But I think there's this influence that probably within and outside Christianity, you've probably already been touched by Swedenborg's ideas. So in short, he was, I think, sort of the OG of, near-death experiences or spiritual experiences. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience, had a whole chapter on Swedenborg in the book that started it all, Life After Life. So Swedenborg was a scientist and like one of the best scientists in the world at the time. He was publishing across almost every field. He was a big name in anatomy and physiology and botany and chemistry. I mean, the sciences weren't as advanced and complex as they are today, but you had to be smart to do that. He was also an inventor. You can't really see it on my screen. We have like a prototype of a mining machine he designed for the Swedish mining industry, which at the time was a major world power with a major economy. He designed military technology for them. He was in the House of Commons, so he was a noble, which meant he was part of the government. He was doing all this stuff.
What a
successfully.
Savant,
He was very, very focused and very smart, and he was kind of trying to figure out the seat of the soul. I mean, he was pushed to try to where does this all go? At the time, there was the Enlightenment was popping off, and there was a lot of people questioning Christianity. And wait, science has given us all these answers. Is there really anything of religion that's true? And so he was searching for the seat of the soul, and just something started to open up in him. And it's so well documented. That's the other thing about Swedenborg. It's like he was literally keeping a journal of his dreams as this was happening. And you can see him start to write down when they become more than dreams. And then he says he has this foundational encounter with Jesus Christ, actually a series of encounters, one of which was in the back room of a pub in London in 1745, where he got some.
Oh, man.
So that's like kicked him into overdrive. And he said that for the rest of his life, he had access to the spiritual world. So he was having what we would now call out-of-body experiences or spiritually transformative experiences every day. But not only that, lucid, like he can control like who he goes and where he talks to. But not only that, he had a mission from God, which was like, you are supposed to reveal these ideas to people because people are in danger of throwing away the Bible because they don't understand what it is or why it matters. People can't really recognize the divine human Jesus Christ as the one God. And also people have separated faith from love. That being religious stopped being about being good, which is what I'm so excited to see you guys beating that drum as well. So from then on out, he wrote 30 volumes over the last 3 decades of his life of this intense, dense, but ultimately, well, obviously, I think fascinating, or else I wouldn't be sitting here embarrassing myself online going through it all the time. That's the short Swedenborg story. I don't know of any. There's plenty of great sources of truth everywhere. I don't know of any source anywhere that's as comprehensive as he is on how does all the big picture stuff fit together and give you a framework by which you don't check your brain at the door. That it's okay. This is the big questions. Why does God allow evil? Who is God? What is God like? What is the Bible and why is it sacred and why does it matter? What's the afterlife like? He gives you this framework that to me clicks it into place.
So fascinating. So I'd love to dive into a bit of why should we trust this guy? I mean, he was a certified genius, a polymath. Didn't he invent the submarine or a prototype of the submarine and early designs of airplanes and things like that as well?
Yeah, we got there's before the Wright brothers, he was sketching out plausible flight machines. Yes, he has some inventions to his name. He founded a scientific branch that's called crystallography, which sounds fake, but it's really today.
No way.
There really is a branch of yeah. So it was much
I
different.
know a few crystallographers.
Okay, so there you go. However, all of that doesn't mean you have to believe what he says, because anybody can be real smart and then go make something up. To me, the reason why the only thing I can do, I can't duplicate or replicate his spiritual experiences. So there's 2 things that keep me hooked on this material. One is like apply it to your life and watch for results. Apply it to your life and watch for results, and then measure it against the rest of what's out there. So near-death experiences, the Bible, everything else out there. Do you see it? And I even said things like Buddhism and mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy. Does it match up and mesh with that? So for me, the reason why I got so hooked on it is because I'll take the things he says about how the spiritual world is and how it works, and I'll use those same dynamics when I'm dealing with my own inner world, and it works. So I can't say you have to believe him because you don't. You can just click to some other video or dismiss him like a lot of people have. But that's what you mentioned before. It welcomes scrutiny. Like you don't take my word for it. Look at the ideas. Does it make sense? Does it line up with what's important to you? And let them prove themselves.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what you should do with anything, right?
Otherwise, it's not yours. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good the idea is. If you heard someone tell you that it's true, you never really grasp it as your own.
Yeah, God wants us to think and to contemplate and to really seek God with all of our mind and heart, as opposed to just hearing something and then, I have to believe this or I'm going to be condemned to hell forever.
Well, if it was like that, obviously that's not the way God is, because look at life. If God wanted you to just listen to someone and you have to believe that, the moment you were born, or maybe wait 3 months and then he just appears in front of you and says, here's how it is. You do everything like this. And then but here we have this open-ended, broad, ambiguous life where you go out and you use your mind and your will and you seek the truth and seek what's good, that must be what God wants us to do.
Yeah. It's a great point. Literally nothing in our observable reality maps onto the idea you have to believe all the correct things in your brain or you get tortured forever. Like there's nothing in our reality that speaks to that. We live in this infinitely mysterious universe that we can literally never stop discovering and learning more about. So it's like, not only does learning not appear to end, but like it's not supposed to end. So why would God predicate the universe on learning has come to an end? You found the right answers. That's it.
Yeah, it's like, well, if it was a video game and all you have to do is beat this one little thing in this corner, why'd they design all these other levels? Why? It's so superfluous. You're driving the budget up. You wouldn't even need to be a whole planet Earth. Just have it be there's one room you're born in. You recite the confession of faith, and that's done. Like, why all this mystery and cells and quantum mechanics? Why that?
Great questions.
So speaking of mysteries, as Swedenborg's having these incredible spiritual experiences, what were some of the shocking discoveries he made as he starts navigating the spiritual realms?
Oh, he has a quote. It's like, I'm just going to paraphrase it, but he says, people think that the spiritual world is like a bird that's flying somewhere far off in the sky that you can kind of see. But actually, the spiritual world is so close that it's like a bird of paradise that its wingtips are touching your face. It's right there. To him, the interplay between the spiritual and the physical is always there. So much so that even your thoughts and your feelings are influenced by the spiritual world. Your consciousness itself actually resides in the spiritual world. What we're experiencing right now is like the meeting point between physical and spiritual. Also, your absolute dependence on God. He even, not just that God's out there somewhere and has created a set of laws and a sandbox for us to play in, but even your ability to think and your ability to live and move, all of that, we are constantly dependent on God for that. And actually, that the secret to life is coming to see the truth in that rather than see the appearance of independence. So that was a huge thing to him. And then I think he also was surprised to learn that a lot of the sort of treasured beliefs of the Christian church in his day were not just false, but damagingly false. And that the reality, I mean, probably the headline would be that he found a heaven that you did not have to be a Christian to go to. Or I guess you could say, on the other hand, what does it mean to be a Christian is much different than what he was taught. That living the life that Jesus prescribes of loving the neighbor, of loving God, that will get you into a state of heaven, regardless of what faith tradition you follow in earnestly trying to do that. Also, I mean, heaven and hell, that he talked about them as primarily states of mind, and that from that, this afterlife emerges that has what you could call a heaven and hell in it, although it was a heaven and hell that was quite different from the Christian. There was a lot of surprises. There's a few of them.
So fascinating. Can you touch a bit more on this state of being? So are you saying that Swedenborg discovered that it's our state of mind and our beliefs and our action, like basically who we become, that's what magnetizes someone to where they go after they pass?
Yeah. So I think, Aaron, you put it well when you said that memorize a couple facts, right, or you get tortured to eternity. It's just the weirdest idea. How did that idea ever get any traction? I guess because it's threatening. So you just, okay, I believe you. Yeah, it's mind control. You don't want to go against it because Pascal's wager, like, well, if it's right, I don't want to. But it's on its face, it's ridiculous. It's cruel, and there's no way that that's what it is. And we were just talking about this open world, mysterious life that we're in, where there's absolutely free will, and there's order. There's an order where why are we on the planet? Well, because of gravity. Why does the planet go around the sun? Because of gravity. Why does there's a strong nuclear force? That there's all these laws. I'm not a physicist, but I know that there's a bunch of laws that's how it works. But then you think of getting into the afterlife, and it seems to become very arbitrary. Like, why is there a heaven and hell? Well, God wants to put people here that he likes, and people he doesn't like go over there. Why do you go to one or the other? Well, somebody like chucks you in one. It doesn't seem to follow the same principles. It becomes almost like cartoonish and narrow. So Swedenborg found a spiritual world that is governed by laws as well. They're different laws than the ones here, but they are universal, and that in the physical, it's matter that matters. So that like the properties of matter and energy are what set everything up. In the spiritual world, it's love and it's wisdom. Those are the two fundamental properties there. So like instead of gravity, you have what you love actually determines the conditions in that world. So
Makes
the
sense.
the short version is heaven and hell are two different kinds of love. Swedenborg will use love in the positive and in the negative sense.
Wow, yeah.
And a short definition is heaven is the love of doing well for others or benefiting other people. Like there's a joy you can get in loving your neighbor. That's what heaven is. And hell is the joy that you get in harming your neighbor or exploiting your neighbor. So there's two different kinds of, you want to know what heaven and hell are, look at the two different kinds of joy that there are. And we certainly see this across the human race. There are people who the thing that electrifies them, what gets them going, gets them out of bed is they want to dominate and crush and kill and get revenge. And that can be a motivator in life. And many people choose that. That's called hell. And there's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, which is like there's some orphans somewhere and I'm going to help them, or I want to solve this problem. I want to cure cancer. And that's what's driving you. That's what heaven. Fundamentally, it's a state of loving the human race or loving yourself alone. And so that forms the core of who you are. Swedenborg has this opening to one of his books, Divine Love and Wisdom, where he says, love is our life. Everybody talks about, oh, I love this thing or that, but what does love actually mean? What you love deep down, and how you can find that out by what do you try to do with your life? That makes you who you are. That makes you who you are. So somebody who loves what God wants us to love, which is actually just God's love coming through you, that puts you in a state that's like God, and things that are like each other in the spiritual world, because love is like spiritual gravity, they come together. So if you love the kind of things God loves, if you love making people happy, if you love doing well to people, and think about Jesus, like let the little children come to me, healing people. If you want to decrease their suffering, you move toward God in the afterlife. And the closer you get to God, the more think of God like the sun, the more like it gets hotter and warmer, and brighter and warmer as you get closer. That's called heaven. As you get closer to God, things get brighter and more beautiful. And also all the other people that love God are moving in that direction too. So you're surrounded by people who love what's good, and then hell is the opposite. You're moving farther away from God because you don't like that. I don't like this. What is this selfless and like nobody's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And I want to be on top. This doesn't. So you move away, and if you're animated by the love of revenge or cruelty or adultery or something, you gather with people who are like that. And that pretty quickly deteriorates into hell. So to Swedenborg, you can go there, and he journeys through these beautiful places he would call heaven and these ghastly places he would call hell. But everybody's there because they go to what they love. And what you love really is the core of how you experience the life after death.
So much good stuff here, man.
Yeah.
Did we talk about this on our interview last time, that you've read The Law of One? I can't remember.
No, I know of The Law of One. We talked about it a bit, but I know that there's some similarities there.
Just tons, man. So many similarities with Swedenborg and The Law of One, because they were both very big in cosmology. How does the universe work? What are the laws of the universe, etc.? And just they perfectly map onto each other. The Law of One calls it the service to others polarity and the service to self polarity. Yeah. And I think you bring up a really interesting point here, man. And I'd love to hear what Swedenborg says about this. Everyone thinks hell is obvious. You would see it coming from a mile away and you would avoid it, But hell it's not obvious. It's tricky, it's deceptive, it sneaks up on you. You have to think about hell as being like, there's just beautiful women in front of it, bars of gold, parties are happening. You're like, oh, that looks like the place to be. And you go towards the pleasure, the lust, the licentiousness, the service to self energy. And then you find yourself in a realm that's torturous and horrible that you can't get out of. So that's a big archetype of the negative polarity, is that only the positive polarity, the service to others path, Jesus called it the way of life, only that has real power. Because I think of it kind of like this. If we're all like stars that are meant to shine and radiate, Jesus said, let your light shine before all men, right? Well, like if there's not another person in front of me, I literally cannot shine. I literally cannot express the love of the Creator without another person. So the service to others polarity is predicated on how I treat others, and I want their highest good as much as I want my own. So then I go to an afterlife realm where I get to experience that, where God wants my good and I get to feel what it's like to be loved and all of that. So then on the other polarity, if I spend my whole life wanting the suffering of others, and that feels good to me to use and harm and control people, I actually wanted their suffering. Well, then guess what? I have to go to a realm where others want my suffering. You always have to experience the exact energy you're giving out. And because the negative polarity doesn't want to give and extend the love of the Creator, they don't have any real power in their polarity. So they have to take power and steal and deceive and manipulate. So I'm curious if Swedenborg touches on that particular dynamic, that the negative path, if we want to call it that, is very deceptive in the way it pulls you in. And we have to be as wise as serpents in our approach to it.
I love that. Yeah, I do think there's a great, this is like expanding my knowledge of the harmony between those two sets of teachings. And I think it's an undeniable truth that look at the world, there's so much evil in the world. Well, why is there so much evil in the world? If it was obvious and you saw it a mile away and it had no appeal, nobody would do it. Everyone would be like, no, why would I? The reason there's so much evil in the world is because evil feels good.
Seductive.
There's no road rage. Why are people because there's a catharsis. And this, like Swedenborg calls it, the pleasures of insanity. And once you understand that heaven is the pleasures of wisdom, hell is the pleasures of insanity. So the reason why people,
that's perfect.
Yeah, the reason why people go for this stuff is it's very hard to detect because it feels good. So you don't want to understand that it's not good. You don't want to call it out. And also the evil always seeks out falsity. Goodness always seeks out truth. So if you have something that you love that is harmful to other people, you're probably going to try to justify it. Yeah, I said that to them, but they deserved it. Right. This is not the, or you, in the worst case, you sort of think of some people as less human than you, so it's okay to do these things to them, or they would do the same to me, whatever it is that justifies it. Once, I think that's a key insight from Swedenborg to me, which makes it click, is that there's a pleasure in both, but as you said, one of them is actual pleasure, and the other one turns from pleasure to unhappiness. So you can see analogs for this all across life. Again, this is what I love, is that it shows up in life. So I know you guys are into fitness, right? So let's talk about junk food. Is there junk food? Is it good or bad? Well, I was eating chips last night. Really great. Really tastes good. However, that happiness turns to unhappiness in a couple of ways. I mean, of course, like in moderation, it's fine. But let's just use it as an example. Pretty soon after, especially as you get older, like you eat McDonald's and pretty soon you feel like, oh, I don't feel good at all right now. But then also you do it for years and years and years, and you're dealing with cholesterol, and so it slowly erodes your happiness. So it leads you from more to less happiness. Whereas this morning I went running and I was like, man, I don't know if I really want to go. At the time when you're like huffing up the hill, I said, this is not. Afterwards, though, man, you feel good. And as you go in life, so it is with the love of heaven. At times, to do the right thing and to not try to serve your own ego and to take up your cross, it doesn't seem like it works. I mean, it's not that fun. There's all these challenges with it. But over time, there's this joy of knowing that not just that you enjoy what you're doing, but that what you're doing is good and that you're in integrity. All these subtle kinds of things you can be proud of yourself about start to spring up. Whereas the more you do the pleasures of insanity, the worse your life gets overall, and the worse the world gets. Whereas the
Yes.
It's this amazing win-win when you love being useful. And Swedenborg will use that term a lot. He'll say there's love and wisdom. Love is like the desire to do good. Wisdom is the knowledge of how to do good. Usefulness is the actual action. So when I actually go out and try to serve, like you guys, you obviously both care about the truth, and you have a desire to spread that. Actually getting and making this podcast that can that's the usefulness. Because now when people jump onto YouTube and they're like, well, what am I going to watch? There's some equivalent of junk food stuff to, I'm going to watch the new Jesus Way podcast, and you improve their life. That's the usefulness. When you enjoy making it, and they and your people you're serving enjoy consuming it, that's this amazing win-win. That's when you've increased the total heaven on earth, as opposed to if I exploit people, I'm just hoarding like I'm happier, they're less happy, nothing's happened. And eventually, in doing so, I'm committing myself more and more into this hell lifestyle, which eventually gets less and less enjoyable. It's like an addiction. You get, oh, this is really great the first 3 times. Now I can't get high anymore. Now I'm miserable. Now my health is failing. I'm not passing a moral judgment on people who get caught up in that. I'm just saying it's a great metaphor for that. Yeah, there's an appeal in hell, but it's a mirage. It doesn't give you the happiness you think it's going to give you.
Yeah.
This touches on why it's such a disservice to humanity, how modern Christianity has basically just made it so you could punch a ticket and go to heaven. Because this takes constant prayer and vigilance and self-auditing, repentance, all of these things, and a genuine usefulness and really taking action to walk the path every single day. And, laziness or just being like not on top of this can lead to your own destruction in a way.
Mm-hmm. I just want to double click on something amazing you said, Curtis. The whole line of heaven is the pleasures of wisdom, hell is the pleasures of insanity. That's one of the best descriptions of the afterlife that I've ever heard. I think we can also take that and make it into like a rule or a principle, which you also touched on it at length, which is like temporary pleasure leads to long-term pain. Temporary pain leads to long-term pleasure. You're willing to like do that cold plunge, do that workout. It sucks. It's tough in the short term, but man, long-term rewards, And then the opposite is when I'm looking for that quick pleasure hit, I can get it. And then it wears off and then I got to deal with the consequences. So that's the nature of heaven and hell. And it's in our minds, right? Where do you make the decision for temporary pain or temporary pleasure? You make the decision in your mind. So it's the only logical conclusion that these two states begin in the human mind without question.
Yes. And I think that we see that that's how life here works. Everybody knows you gotta, whether it's health or education or let's say you got a relationship you're working on, that it's about putting in that work. And Jesus doesn't just say believe. He said repent. Repent, take up your cross. Is continually urging people to go and do that, and forget. Right, and not just you did it. All right, I forgave someone. Everybody knows that's not how biology works. If you're trying to lift more weight, you gotta get your reps in. You got to strengthen your tendons. That's the way everything else works. Why wouldn't it be that this works that way? And then the heaven and hell, Swedenborg says, the heaven that someone experiences outwardly is in keeping with the heaven that's within them. So that's where it begins. Like the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now in the spiritual world, as he describes it, that actually, because that afterlife is like what's inside you becomes sort of manifest outside. You could experience when people have like a near-death experience and they see beautiful sights, and that can all be out there. But ultimately, it starts with what's in the heart, and that's why Jesus was so concerned with what's in your heart and your mind. If heaven was just about an external place, why didn't he just come down and build really nice temples and build why was he so concerned with what's going on in your motivation and in your understanding? Because that's where all the action is. So that's what matters. That's where the human race rises or falls, is what do we love and what principles do we believe and act on to bring that love to life.
Man, so are there different spiritual forces that are interacting with humans as they go through life, and they're kind of polarizing in one direction or the other? Can you talk about the forces of heaven and hell, how they interact with humans?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things about Swedenborg, and why I got so into him. I mean, if I had an origin story, it would be that I've struggled with depression and anxiety and obsessive compulsive and all these sort of mental health challenges, or whatever you want to call them. But my mind won't do what I want it to do. It's constantly like trying to sabotage me and make me miserable. All these thoughts, all these feelings, and I couldn't for the life of me. Why is it doing that? Why
Yeah.
my own mind? I thought it was my territory. Why am I fighting this thing constantly? So if you look inside the mind and you start to look out at like, how do people deal with unruly minds, and you look at something like, I love cognitive behavioral therapy, something I've been learning. So that's just one modality, which is like, well, when you get what's called automatic thoughts, which is if before this podcast I might like, I'm not going to know what to say on this podcast and it's going to go terribly. That might just pop into my head. I'm going to embarrass myself with these guys, and they're going to be like, well, sorry, we lost the footage. We couldn't post it. So
worst nightmare.
Yeah, that's right. Which actually just would be you guys saying, man, he was so bad that we didn't want to post it. So that pops in, automatic thought. Cognitive behavioral therapy would be like, okay, well, before you just run with that, because that's what your mind wants you to do, are there other possible things that might happen? Are there other scenarios? It's just like, hold that at arm's length. That's like basically what all psychology is can you just step back, just create a little separation. That's what mindfulness is like, watch your thoughts go across. And if that's what all of modern academically infused treatment for mental health stuff is like, just hold that at arm's length. So why would that be? Swedenborg, maybe the most surprising discovery he made is that heaven and hell, that what we just talked about, they're not abstractions that you'll encounter someday. Like, you are in the middle of it right now. So if you think of, there's all the people that have ever lived in this world are there in the afterlife right now. Al Capone's there. There's whoever you can think of in history is there, and people who are like they were here are like they are now. I mean, you take yourself with you there.
Yeah.
So we are constantly being influenced by both heaven and hell in our mind. So the polarity that seems to exist there, why do you have some constructive, supportive urges and thoughts that come in? Why do you have some destructive, non-helpful? To Swedenborg, he could just see, oh, this is heaven flowing in over here. This is hell flowing in over here. And we are constantly being asked to choose between the two. And you can think of it, it sounds bizarre, but there are a lot of analogs to it. If you think about why do we get sick? There's constantly this battle between, there are helpful and harmful microbes in your body, just physically. Like you got a bunch of germs that are trying to infect you. You got a bunch of immune cells and gut bacteria that are trying to help you out. You live in this balance between them. So it is with the afterlife and with heaven and hell. And that as we choose heaven or hell in our life and mind, our spirit actually moves in the spiritual world, like that process I talked about. So you can move more into heaven, and then you're surrounded more by heaven. And so you get more heavenly. Think about the difference between you now and 10 years ago, right? You're in a different space. You're in a different headspace. So what I will take away from that, and I'm not somebody that's had like big spiritual experiences or anything, but when I learn about the dynamic of heaven and hell as he describes it, and how he saw down to the granular detail, this is how hell is trying to influence me, this is how heaven's trying to influence me. When I just apply that to my thoughts and feelings, man, it's a powerful tool. It's a spiritual crowbar to get that. It's the answer to, why does getting space help? So instead of something comes in and I just say, well, I'm going to go with it because it's mine. No, when something comes in, is this like the pleasure of wisdom, or is this the pleasure of insanity? Or is this a truth or a fault? Would this come from heaven or hell? And if it comes from heaven, you thank God for it and give him the credit, and then you try to act on it, make it part of your life. If it comes from hell, you'd like, okay, well, I'm not scared of this because I know that the God is the only real power, as you mentioned. So that's that one's been paying dividends for me.
Oh man, that's amazing, man. And this is something we talk about on the podcast quite a bit in regards of reforming Christianity, is the certainty addiction. that religion instills, right? When you grow up in religion, you're constantly being told, hey, you now believe all the right things, but by joining our religion and joining our church, you have accepted all the correct truths of the universe. And all the other ones are flatly false, and you should not investigate them. So I think I don't want to give religion all the blame for this, because I think certainty addiction is not unique just to religion. I think it's unique to the human ego. Like every ego has a certainty addiction, because to feel certain you know what's true gives a feeling of safety. And that's ultimately what the ego is, right? Is our kind of defense against the dangerous, cold, scary universe we appear to be in. So the ego wants to know what's true so it can feel safe and certain that it's going to survive and all that. So it's an innocent, primitive mechanism in the mind. And so it's not evil or something, but it is that mechanism that causes us to do what you described, where the automatic thought comes through. And it's a horrible, terrible thought you'd never want to think by yourself of your own accord. And yet it appears in your brain, so you think it's yours, and you go, yeah, I know that's true. And the certainty addiction kicks in. Yeah, that's true. It's like whatever I think in my brain is true. And that's how most people actually live, is whatever I think in my brain is true. And so the second someone opposes me, I'm angry at you, you're my enemy. It all stems from this certainty addiction. And what I've heard from Swedenborg a little bit is this idea of, and I don't think he uses this term, Curtis, but like consensus realities in the afterlife, where a bunch of, people that are like evangelical Protestants will go to some realm where they're like eternally worshiping their version of God. And they're sort of allowed to be in that realm for a while until they start to question and go, wait a minute, is this all we're here to do in heaven, is just this eternal church service? And then they're finally allowed to leave and travel through other realms. And interestingly, I'd love to hear you expound on this as well. Part two to my question is, what does Swedenborg say happened to Paul in the afterlife? I'm wearing my Les Paul shirt. I've heard that. Go ahead.
When you hit record was when I first realized what your shirt was. And so I was like, I better not be cracking up to myself.
Pretty quick. Takes most people a while, actually, to get the double entendre there. But doesn't he say that Paul went to a realm where even Paul was very certain of what he believed in his life, right? Jesus is coming back any second now. Don't get married. Don't get a job. If you're a slave, don't be free, because Jesus is going to come down from the clouds, et cetera, et cetera. I'm telling you, it's happening. And then it didn't happen, and he dies and he goes to the afterlife. I can only imagine what kind of afterlife realms he encountered, but I want to say I've heard Swedenborg said something like he sort of happened upon Paul at one point in the afterlife realms, in the hellish realms, and he was still preaching and proselytizing kind of his similar religion. Is that right?
Yeah. So Swedenborg will give a few accounts of famous figures and his conversations with them and where they went in the afterlife. So, and Paul does come up a few times, and I even brushed up on it before this interview to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So,
smart man.
I'll give you the rundown, and I'll spoil the ending by saying, he doesn't give a final picture of this is exactly where Paul is now, but he gives him a couple of steps through this. So, I want to begin with the principle that the character of a person does not necessarily define whether or not they can produce something useful. So, for example, to Swedenborg, there's plenty of people who appear in the Bible who were historical figures who are not good people. They did not love their neighbor, but yet still God could, through them, accomplish something that is useful. Actually, Swedenborg even gives the account that just overall in life, sometimes God can use people who are not good to do more good than people who are good, because people who are not good are driven by their ego so much to like succeed that they can, and because they want a good reputation, they will do good things for human beings. So he would say Swedenborg's take on Paul was, he said that there's a thing that is sort of at the core of what hell is, which is, he calls it the love of self, but by that he really means the love of your own importance and power. Ego. And that he said, your ego. Yeah. Swedenborg had this, by the way. I mean, before he had his spiritual awakening, he had quite a big ego, and he admits this. And in his experiences, he had to challenge that and confront that. There's a lot of painful work he had to do to get that to become quiescent. So he says that Paul had a problem with that as well. Before his conversion to Christianity, Paul was looking for power. And after Christianity, that Paul was still thinking in an earthly way, like because I'm doing so much for Christianity, I'm going to be an important ruler in the afterlife, sort of who's the greatest among you. So even though Swedenborg says there's plenty of good things in Paul's writings, and that they came through a heart that was still dealing with all this ego stuff. And so you take that with you to the other side.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Paul was, yes, Swedenborg had some encounters with Paul where Paul had, was running with some pretty evil people and trying to do some nefarious things, and was still trying to use religion for power and for prestige and position, preaching similar ideas. And there was some sense of like maybe he was getting a bit better. There was some things he started to recant, but it wasn't like he's the Apostle Paul. Swedenborg does say the other apostles had kind of rejected him because he was so bent on worldly power and those sorts of things. So who knows? Wow. Hopefully he's made a full correction and is now looking at the kind of servant leadership that Jesus pushes you towards. But he did say that Paul's writings were a necessary part of providence to help kickstart the church. And they're teachings that he says it's strange how little to do with Jesus those teachings are. Like they never try to explain a parable of Jesus or something. And according to Swedenborg, and this is all, a lot of granular detail, but providence was trying to keep those two things in separate containers. Because then if people did what you would call profane, like take Paul's teachings and use them to justify a not good life, that wouldn't like pollute the teachings of Jesus. So there can be, Paul can be a great add-on. He definitely makes a distinction between the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament besides Revelation. To Swedenborg, the parts of the Bible that are really the Word have this inner meaning to them. They have spiritual, whereas some of the New Testament stuff it's good. It can be good books for the church, but it doesn't have this same spiritual depth to it. Swedenborg would say his own writings don't have the same spiritual depth as the actual Bible, which has this infinite symbolic. So in conclusion, Paul had some work to do in the afterlife, but there was other biblical figures that were the same. But ultimately there's a plan and all that. And so that was the story of Swedenborg and Paul chatting afterwards.
Man, thank you for taking us through that. That's so fascinating. To me, Swedenborg just had the perfect take on Paul. That's amazing. Yeah. Like I'm point for point with him on all of those things. And I even find it amazing that he discussed or hinted at the rejection of Paul by the apostles, like long before scholarship had really caught on to it the way it has now, because most of these ancient patristic texts weren't even available in English until like a few hundred years ago. Like we've gone the last few thousand years of church history with very little ability for the average person to actually dice into the history and learn these things. So we're in a new frontier today, but like even Swedenborg was picking this up in his day, long before it was really well known that, like the disciples rejected Paul for these reasons. They're like, he didn't meet our master. He's not an actual heir of the teachings of Jesus, and he doesn't even teach what Jesus taught. So it's not that he's bad. He's not the bad guy. He's not a mustache twirling villain or something. He's just well-meaning guy who was misled. And I've had this conversation with Christians, James and I both have, with Christians pretty regularly about Paul, where they want us to have a black and white view, and nuanced views really tend to set the hair on fire, kind of like Swedenborg, where it's like, I think the Bible is more divinely inspired than my own writings, and it's full of man-made interpolations. Like, no, you can't think that. You just have to have one view. On Paul, it's the same thing. Paul he was this serial killer who got converted, right? And I've said this to Christians, like, guys, how can you have this black and white view of this really human being person named Paul? He was not a God sent from heaven. He was a normal guy like us. Imagine if you had gone from being a serial killer, murdering Nazarene Christians, and then you try to convert to join their movement of the people you were murdering. You'd probably have a little bit of trauma to work through. So when I read Paul's writings, I see that trauma all throughout his writings, man. I see it in his psychology. Like he needed to give himself a purpose to feel validated, because it would be extremely difficult to be around the people you used to persecute, even to the death, as Paul said. So you see Paul evolving through his writings very significantly, which is why you don't get the same Paul in Galatians as you get in Romans. It's a different Paul with every different epistle, because the guy was on a spiritual journey just like us. So I give him that credit. I'm not even saying he didn't teach great things. It's just like, look, we already have the teachings of Jesus. We don't need to take anyone else as inspired, infallible scripture. We can trust in the words of Jesus alone. That's really my only argument. But as it pertains to Paul, he's easy to demonize, of course, and I've been guilty of that in the past. But I love Swedenborg's take of all the nuance involved here, like especially the point you made about how we've also said this, like maybe Christianity would never have taken off if it wasn't for Paul. Like Jesus's teachings would have never been known to the world without Paul. I can see a good argument to be made there, but especially the one you made is interesting, that it's also the universe did it in such a way that even if Paul corrupts Jesus's teachings, it falls back on Paul at the end of the day, not Jesus. I think that's a brilliant point as well.
Yeah, it shows some foresight, and also that God is always going to work with us where we are, and understands our psychology enough to know like what's going to fly and what's not. What will people? Because it's pretty amazing that the Christianity did survive and survived, and it's sort of like a Trojan horse. Like it's all right here. It's got into the cultural psyche, and now it's ready to. It's ready to. And Swedenborg. I mean, you could say he's a Christian reformer in a lot of ways. That he actually said that there was a first age of Christianity that kind of has come to a close, and it came to a close around the era where Swedenborg was, which is it had started well, but it really become bankrupt in a lot of ways. It was a lot about power. It was not about leading a good life. It was about faith alone, without good works, and it wasn't about loving the Lord and loving your neighbor. But Swedenborg was very adamant that there was a new Christianity on the horizon that was going to really live the life that Jesus wanted us to do, and that was going to be something that really set the human race up for its best era yet. It'd be in our new Christian era.
Let's go.
Amazing. That's what we're here for, man.
I wanted to go back real quick to what Aaron was talking about and something you mentioned about Paul potentially repenting even in the afterlife. So do souls have an ability to evolve or change while in the afterlife, or are you kind of sealed into this pattern forever?
Well, you got to, I mean, very few people get to the afterlife, according to Swedenborg, with totally sorted out. I mean, we go in there as a mixture. You were just saying, Aaron, that Paul is human. When we say I'm only human, that usually means I'm kind of good and kind of bad. Like,
there's got a little bit of everything.
Got a little bit of everything, and I think us as like religion podcasters, you can get on here and you talk about, this is so good, and then I get home and I'm like, oh, my dog, and I'm yelling at my, like, you have like your work in progress. Yeah,
not us, Curtis. I mean,
I know I should have chose a different example. So I just think about that more with myself. Like I'll often catch myself like, you better be that guy that people think you are on the podcast,
Oh, yeah.
So this is another thing that people criticize about the idea of heaven and hell. It's like, why is it so, like, who's all the way good and who's all the way evil? Everyone's kind of a mixture. So the way that Swedenborg describes it is, yes, we're a mixture, but deep down you have what he calls a ruling love. This is what do you love above all? And when it gets down to it, like, are you fundamentally selfish, or are you fundamentally selfless? And this is what we work on over the course of our life. We try to move toward the selflessness that Jesus is and embodies. When you come into the afterlife, at first, you're this mixture. You got a lot of good in you, and you got a lot of evil in you, and you got a lot of truth in you, and you got a lot of falsity in you. And the first phase of the afterlife I think of it like a centrifuge. So a centrifuge is just like a thing that spins, and if something's light, it'll go up to the top. If it's heavy, it'll get thrown to the bottom. That's how they separate out.
Right.
If you're doing a blood sample and they want to get the red blood cells out, they'll spin it, and then so it's kind of like a centrifuge where, if let's say you're somebody who, let's say at heart you are vicious and cruel and evil, but yet you have this outer shell of piousness and you act like you're good, and those things need to get separated. And there's a lot of reason for that. Not least of all that it will cause you misery in the afterlife, because those two things want to move in opposite directions and they kind of pull you apart. You got to kind of get your inner life and your outer life to line up. So everyone goes through this phase in what he calls the world of spirits, which is just like the initial place you show up in, where you kind of get to sort out who you are. And you get to make decisions. And this can last quite a while as you discover, like, are you going to cling on to the good or cling on to the evil? And if you cling on to the evil, then the good never goes away. It just kind of gets made dormant, because if you go and live the life of hell, the goodness you have will make you miserable. So God like puts that kind of to sleep, so that you're, at least you can, because like hell is just God saying, all right, you're going to love revenge or lying or cruelty, whatever. I'm going to make the space where you can have the happiest life you can have, given that that's what you're making your life about. So hell is just it's the same principle as heaven, which is, I'm going to try to give you the best life you can have. You're making it tough on me because you love these terrible things. So you're going to have some frustration because you're not allowed to go and kill everyone, because we can't have that. So if you're going to hell, you need to have the good stuff kind of go to sleep so that it doesn't rip you apart. And if you're going to heaven, the bad stuff, it's not like, there's that thing in Job, the angels are not pure in his sight. It's not like people in heaven are good from themselves at 100% pure. It's like, it would be like us. We just have the bad parts of us. You get mastery over this. They're kind of out into the sides. And so that you can come and kind of breathe the atmosphere of mutual love and live in that. And you still have work to do. You're still improving. You still got to face things, but it's kind of an upward trajectory. If you're in hell, God will not let you get worse, and is always trying to, he talks about people going through any hard things people go through there, any like punishments or any of that is just about correcting and trying to change you. So it's kind of like here that there are laws in different communities in hell. He'll talk about people who are, we really want to steal from each other, but we're not allowed. If we actually do, then we have to kind of like a penal code. But that's all aimed at something. It's not just torment. It's aimed at trying to get you to let go of that lifestyle. So everyone's always being moved, to the extent that they'll allow, into something that's more and more based on something useful, something good, something true, so that if you're in hell, you can be in a milder hell. If you're in heaven, you can be in a better heaven. So there's a lot of dynamism there. It never stops to eternity. I mean, one of you mentioned earlier, like the end of learning. Oh, Aaron, it was the end of learning. Yeah, that he specifically says, if you could ever, okay, I did it. Now I finally am all the way done. That would be the end of joy in life. So he talks about it like an asymptote, like those graphs that just get closer and closer forever. You never be as good as God. You never be fully perfect, but you continually are growing into that. So it's dynamic. It's more dynamic and more real and more alive than this life that we have here.
Incredible. We talk about, I'll pass it to you in a second, Aaron, but we always talk about how an eternal hell of conscious torment, just for really no reason, does not serve God's glory whatsoever. If God has all knowledge, all power, so everything must serve some kind of utility, some type of purpose. So Swedenborg's model of hell makes perfect sense, or at least a lot more sense than the conventional Christian view.
Well, I mean, just think about like what a ghastly accusation that is to make of God. That the torture in itself, if you're just thinking like, what's the most evil thing you can do? It's torture. I mean, that's pretty close. It's up there. And what is it? Nobody would argue like it's immoral for a surgeon to cut you open. Like you got to do that, right? But there's a purpose to that. There even if it's got to be rough for a little while, there's a purpose to that. Even like a punishment. Let's say you got to punish somebody. There's got to be a purpose to it. It's ultimately, if a judge, let's say a really good judge, this guy comes in with his third DUI, and the judge is like, no, you got to do whatever, 5 years in jail. And the guy's like, no, please let me go. Like, no, because if I don't, you're going to kill somebody the next time. And then this is actually there has to be a purpose. But the idea of how is an eternal punishment going to have a purpose? What does that do? It's not for correction. It's nothing. And the idea that you would want it's just a form of revenge. And revenge is the hallmark of hell. It's not God. Like, why would love want you to feel pain for something it's a non-starter. I mean,
Yep.
come on, let's not paint God with that brush.
Yeah, the only reason that view comes in ever is because of mental control, right? You've got to control people's minds, get them to be very afraid and very guilty, and then you can make them do and believe whatever you want. Outside of that, there is no logic, there's no utility, there's no consistency in any sense to that belief. And it says all kinds of horrific, denigrating things about the nature of God. To your point, to both your points, how does it bring God any glory to torture people forever with no hope of redemption? Like just torture. And then the other funny thing is there is no one consensus model of how this works in Christianity, right? It's a bit like flat earth, where like you debate flat earth, you could refute one model, but then they'll just give you a different model, to refute, because there's no one consensus model. It's like that with hell in Christianity. Some people say, oh, the devil takes them to hell. Say, oh, the devil sucks God's precious children into hell against God's will. Well, no, God allows him to suck them into hell. It's like they don't want God to be guilty of sending them to hell. So in some models, the Calvinists are like, God does it and he delights in it. You're like, wow, that's like the most evil thing ever. And then other models are like, oh, God hates it. It sucks, but he has to do it because. And either way, you get an impotent God that's not omniscient, not omnipotent, definitely not omnibenevolent. Because one of the 5 O's we talked about on your channel, we talk about here all the time, omnibenevolence.
Right.
You have to, if God is good, then everything ultimately in the end serves God's goodness, works towards goodness. God is incapable of doing anything that brings harm without redemption. So harm can be used for redemption, but it can't be the ultimate end. And so when you say it is, all you're saying is God is evil. That's all you're saying.
Yeah. I used to have a fish tank. So I had a 55-gallon fish tank, and I've since given it up, but it was so fun. When you have fish tank, you need to be responsible. There's a certain limit that they prescribe for how much fish you can have in there. And
Right.
generally it's like 1 inch per gallon, because if you go above that, the filter's not going to be able to keep up with it. And it's going to build up nitrates and nitrites, and that's going to deteriorate. They're also going to be at risk of disease from overcrowding, and the fish are going to be too stressed because they're too crowded. Like, so if you're going to go and be a fish tank owner, you got to have responsibility to not overstock it, because these little helpless fish, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
God is not a bad fish tank owner. Like if he's like, well, I'm just going to make all these people, and oh man, I didn't really see that coming. Now they're sucked into hell. Well, I can't stop, and just like didn't think about that it would be better if some people never got created. Absolutely, that's irresponsible, and you wouldn't admire that in a human being. And it's insulting to say that God would be like that. That God is very, very careful to constantly try to render every goodness to everyone ever. And he does in Swedenborg's model. It's like, here's life. You can choose what you want your life to be about. And there's a whole buffet out there. And there's stuff that is really bad and it can feel good, and God is commanding, like, don't make that what you love. Don't do that stuff. Don't center your life around it. But if you do, okay, I'm going to give you the best life you can have. There's going to be some rules about who you can or can't do this to other people. But the hell that Swedenborg describes it's not like, I'm not getting even with you for choosing that.
Yeah.
Like, would you admire a father more who didn't care what his disobedient child was feeling, or one that, even if he had to show some tough love, is going back then behind the curtain and crying because, like, I can't believe that this is happening? Obviously we admire that more. And the idea that God can just, like, oh, you're going to go to hell and be miserable forever, and I'm just going to be here partying in heaven with my kids that I like. Absolutely not. God's with everyone constantly. And there's no way he didn't foresee that this was going to happen, and he has a plan for it. Otherwise, he bought too many fish for the fish tank, and he should get his license taken away. Yeah.
We joke about this too sometimes, like the logical fallacies just never end. When you say, okay, so how can I be happy in heaven knowing that Uncle Stan is roasting in hell forever, or Aunt Lucy, or like my best friend from junior high, they're just roasting in hell forever. I'm supposed to have a great time in heaven knowing that. And then the answer I always get is, well, no, God will wipe your memory of them, so you don't know that they're doing. Whoa,
Men in Black
whoa,
style.
whoa. Dude, this just got way more dark. You're telling me God's going to wipe my memory of the most beautiful, precious relationships I had in life so he can torture them without me knowing it? And they're like, well, that's not
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah, it definitely shows, okay, there's a leak in this ship. Something's
Yeah,
not
for
adding
sure.
up. It's not adding up. If you need to just keep throwing on absurdities on top of absurdities, and it doesn't match up with. Yes, I can understand. Everybody gets to choose the life that they love, and
Mhm.
let's say somebody I knew in junior high school, they do love what's evil and they want to make their life around it. Well, maybe part of what I can do is like go try to, even when you're in hell, there's certain angels, which is just, those are just people who are in heaven,
Yeah,
who their job is to be in hell, taking care of people, like mitigating, making sure people don't go too far,
it's part
improving
of their
people,
service.
teaching
Yeah.
people. So it's
Wow.
like, no, we're not giving up on that. And Swedenborg also says that the opposite of your like wipe my memory example is that he says any angel would gladly trade places with anyone in hell if anyone in hell wanted to,
Wow.
because the angelic mindset is the opposite of the memory wipe. It's I can't be happy unless my happiness
Yeah.
is shared with somebody else. So the people that are in the state of hell that Swedenborg talks to, because he does talk to some and records it, there's a famous encounter he has at the end of his book Divine Providence where he actually says, forgive me for writing the following to fill out the rest of the page. And that's because like when you were printing back then, paper was so valuable, it wasn't good to have like a page with just a paragraph on it. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but he says a couple of spirits from hell came up and they said to me, you've written a lot from spirits from heaven, but now you got to write from what we want to say. And he said, okay, what do you want to say? And they don't say, help us, God, we're sorry, please get us out of here. They basically are saying, you people in heaven are a bunch of dorks. You're a bunch of squares. Like everybody has their pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, we love adultery and lying and theft and perjury and all these things. You know, we just have some rules that if we go too far, then we have consequences for that. And Swedenborg says, well, that's filthy. And they're like, well, yeah, but we don't care because we like it. So that's the mindset, you know. And he talks constantly about how divine providence will try to give them, will even let them experience some of these sick joys to the extent, but in ways that don't harm people. He talks about this room he went into where there's people who have been consumed by the love of wealth, and they get to sit at a table and like kind of divide up gold, and they do something so that it seems to them like they have a ton of money, and they just get to sit there and like, I love this, but they can't steal from each other because if they stole from each other, that would make it worse. The point is like, we're trying to find a way that, okay, I realize you got this addiction to evil. We're trying to wean you off of that, but we're not, okay, we're going to let you, if you want another hit here, you can take it, but we're also going to try to lead you away from it. It's the same principle. How can I give you the happiest life you can have, given that you got wrapped up in this terrible thing? And the angels aren't like, man, how did you lose the game of life so much? They feel like, you know, but for the grace of God go I, and how can I help and serve you? Because that's what, it's just like Jesus came and he's like, I'm going to sit with everyone who's had any kind of sin or a problem, and I'm going to forgive them and try to. So nobody's keeping anyone in hell. It's your own heart that puts you where you want to go. So you got to fix your heart if you want to enjoy something different.
But that's good works, Curtis. And by works, no man can be saved.
Well, but works is the hard one. Works is what you got to work at. Right? And like, who do you have more respect for? Somebody who says they do something, or someone who does it? Especially when it's something hard. I'm an ultra marathoner. I never ran one, but I still, you know, like that's who I am. Yeah, like that. Of course not. And there's nobody. Whether you believe in religion or not, there's nobody who doesn't respect someone who really lives by their principles. So that, I think that's an indicator that matters more. People are remembered for, you know, did they actually walk the talk? So the good works thing, that's the culmination. Like, faith is in there. Sure. I mean, the ideas of like who God is and right and wrong, and that is, without that, you can get sucked into you'll never be able to outsmart your own ego or the hell in you. It will always trick you into,
Right.
but that's just a stepping stone to actually doing the things. That's when you change who you are. So, and also good works are awesome. I benefit from people's good work. We have to take my daughter had a medical thing, which luckily has turned out fine, but we had to take her to this big old facility, and man, having those people there who put in the time and effort to do all the hard work of like learning how to care for kids, like that, it is absolutely from God, like to do useful things for each other. 100% to put in the time and effort to do good works, even though you're tired and you're going to wake up though and work on this problem, as 100% from God.
Yep, because God is love. God isn't loving. God is love itself, as Swedenborg said. So when someone is being loving and helping your daughter, that's actually God shining through that person, correct? Is that how Swedenborg would see it?
Yeah. And you can tell. I mean, you can tell. You can just feel it when you see that love and that wisdom coming through. To Swedenborg would say, yeah, that there's a couple of degrees of God shining through that can be. Even if the person, let's say you're a doctor and you do really help someone, but you're just doing it because you want to become the region's top doctor and you're self-obsessed. That's God coming through in spite of the person. The good is still done because my daughter still helped. Like, and I get to bring her home and we're all good and she gets to live a happy. The good is still done. It doesn't do any good for that person though, because they're taking credit for it. They're making it about themselves. The next level up from that is if that doctor like believes, first of all, it's like I'm not really thinking about myself in this equation. I'm actually focusing on the good that can be done. So I'm actually sitting there and concentrating on, okay, what is wrong with her? What does she need? How could I help? Then that's a level up, because then you're focused on what's actually good rather than focused on yourself in it. And the third level is that doctor thinking about the problem, trying to solve it. And if it works, saying, thank you, God, for doing that. Like give the credit to God. Then you actually understand the reality, because the wisdom and the love that made you actually do that, absolutely, that has to come from heaven. Or even though it seems like it just comes from inside, you just generate it spontaneously. Absolutely not. That comes all the way from the divine in through your mind. And the only good that ever happens in the world that's genuinely good is coming from God.
What do you think's happening when someone has good intentions, but they're, wreaking havoc? Like a surgeon who's like, oh, I want to help this person, but they're a terrible surgeon. They're killing everybody. Like what's happening there spiritually?
Yeah. So all you need is love is not quite right. It's not just all you need is love. You need love and wisdom together. That I mean, the intention. So if somebody's wreaking havoc and they're doing a bad job, with the medicine they're trying to practice, it could have it has a good impact on their spirit. Like that is if you are genuinely, honestly trying to do what's right, that is creating heaven inside you. Now you may, if you have a blind spot because of your ego where you don't want to assess yourself and see why am I not helping, there may be, but
why is everyone dying?
Yeah, like just like something, but even if you're mistaken, it's the intent. And you see this in like a criminal case. Like what's the difference between like a murder and a manslaughter? It's intent. You weren't trying to. It's a tragic accident. Even though the person has still sadly died, you weren't trying. It's a huge difference if it was a... so the intent is what changes your heart. However, the effect in the world and the ability for that goodness really to grow, it has to be paired with truth. It has to be paired with truth. That's why it's so important to learn truths. That's why it's so important to come to understand the mysteries of religion. Why not just, if it's just all about doing good, to really create heaven inside you, it's not just love, it's love and wisdom. And love and wisdom really even aren't enough. They have to come into usefulness. So you need all three parts, because Jesus healed, but he also taught. And the teaching is what allows the love to find its form. He talked about as I said, in the spiritual world, it's about love and it's about wisdom. The love is sort of like the underlying essence of a thing, and the wisdom is the form that it takes. So if I say, and you want one if you have the other. If I really say I love, let's say I love my wife, but I don't take any time to think about like, what does she like and how can I help her? It's like, okay, I mean, do you? If you really care about someone, you have a natural like, okay, well, what do they like? What do they want for Christmas? Like, what is it that I can do to get my goal, which is the happiness? So you really want it to live the good life is primarily you want to shun evils, which is the first step, according to Swedenborg. Shun evil, because it doesn't matter how many hospitals you're endowing, or if you're going off and robbing banks, it doesn't. But then once I'm shunning evils, how do I collect the knowledge I need to really do what's useful for people? And the highest knowledge is spiritual knowledge. So you got to get that right before you get your moral and your civic knowledge, so that you can be useful in the world.
You know, Curtis, one of the other things I think that legitimizes Swedenborg's work so much is not just its correlation to texts like A Course in Miracles and the Law of One, but even just near-death experiences. I don't think there was a whole lot of recorded NDEs in Swedenborg's day. Definitely not like there is now. Where now, to me, I feel like it's kind of the greatest secret in town that nobody still knows about, I guess. It's like, hey guys, there's millions of recorded NDEs of people all saying the exact same thing, basically. We're judged by how we live and how we love one another. The universe is a big morality test. You're going to go to a realm that matches how you live. Like, you just hear this from millions and millions of people now, to where I would just think, shouldn't the case be closed at this point? We know the purpose of life. People have come back from the dead to talk about it. But Swedenborg didn't quite have that luxury in his day. And yet he very much was espousing exactly what people say who've actually died and come back to talk about it. So it shows me he really was going to these afterlife realms clearly. And he was really having these experiences he's describing and learning these things. And I think one of the interesting things to me, the Law of One talks about how the term they use is polarizing, gaining more spiritual polarity. They say it's a little bit like you're walking up a staircase of light, and every new step is a little bit brighter. And after your human lifetime, you're trying to walk up as many steps of light as you can get. But if you're still on the third density stairs when you end your life and it's too bright to keep walking up further, then you got to reincarnate again back into third density. If in your third density lifetime you make it up to the fourth density stairs of light, that's how the Logos, the divine mind, knows that your soul is ready for the next level, the next density. And it makes sense that it would work that way, like grades in school or something. But what's interesting is this whole concept of pleasure and pain and the way that Jesus talked about it in his own gospel teachings. One of the most interesting or like enigmatic teachings of Jesus about the kingdom to me is when he says, the kingdom of heaven comes like a thief in the night. And this has always been taken to be like a rapture verse, right? Oh, Jesus is coming back like a thief in the night. It's like, well, not quite. He's telling a parable, a metaphor, right? I think what it means probably is that the negative polarity comes with great trumpets and sirens announcing itself. Here's where the pleasure is. This can make you happy. Come and get this, come and get that. And so when you chase the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you're getting these huge temporary dopamine hits, right? So you get to see right away, hey, this path really does feel pretty good. Whereas when you choose the path of light, the positive polarity, the pleasures are not gross, but subtle, right? They're not so much physical gross pleasures. They're subtle spiritual pleasures where your state of being is actually gradually improving over time. And so it's easier to not notice the benefits of walking the positive polarity, whereas the benefits on the negative polarity announce themselves right away. Lots of gross pleasures available tonight if you want, But if you want the pleasures of the kingdom, you're not going to just get all those tonight. You've got to live this for a while. You got to go out and actually be of service. And I think that's what Jesus meant when he said, it comes like a thief in the night comes. Like you don't see it coming. The rewards and pleasures of heaven come very slowly and gradually, and they pervade your state of being in a way that is not detectable immediately. So I love how Swedenborg pulls this pain-pleasure paradox out between these two choices we have. And Jesus was clearly showing us this choice we have. There's the broad road that leads to destruction, the gross pleasures, and there's the narrow road that leads to life, the subtle pleasures that few seek after and few chase and find, few that seek and find. So what does Swedenborg say about these teachings of Jesus, if anything, and these two choices and the dichotomies between them?
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think there's this experiment called the marshmallow experiment. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it was this famous.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
The famous experiment that's like they put a little kid in a room and they say, "Here's a marshmallow. You can eat that if you want, or if you can wait, I think it's like 8 minutes, you'll get 2 of them." And it's actually this big predictor of your future success in life. If you can wait, then you get both. There's an element of that to good versus evil, and I think that that's kind of cool that it's set up that way, because
Yeah.
so there's a sort of blind pleasure seeking life that you can be in, where you're like a bull in a china shop and you're just trying to get what you want and good experiences, not realizing that you're surrounded by all these other people and we affect each other in these big ways. We're very vulnerable to each other. So if you're just kind of seeking one thing after another, there's a shallow life that you're in. But to have to do a little self-denial, a little taking up the cross and following Jesus, to lay down a bit of your life for your friends, you start to glimpse the reality of like, oh, there's other people that are here, and I'm actually gonna, like, what is the life you can lay down? It's like, this is stuff that would feel good to me. I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to harm you. That's a whole different, that's this amazing new, you seeing a new level of life. So it's like, if the road to heaven was big and broad and it was just like, okay, I won't do these things, but I'll just do these, and these are fun right away. And there's sort of like, you get there without really being awake to what love actually is. And how can love express itself other than I would take a bullet for you. I really would. And we get the chance to actually do that in life. So to me, there's something really meaningful and really powerful about that. And I think this is why is suffering allowed? Why are there hard choices? I think it's because the state you can get to once there actually is a choice and you got to put skin in the game and give of yourself, there's a deeper communion there. There's a deeper happiness that comes from choosing it real and going through the hard life that we all go through. So I think it might hint to, like, God knows what he's doing, that the best of the best of all possible worlds. There's a reason why it's not just life is just easy mode, because there's a deeper happiness that's real that we can get to.
Well, I mean, imagine if we just incarnated as beings of pure love and light. We would just, from step one, pure love. How much more meaningful is us choosing love when we have all of these options, all of these, we're being pulled towards pleasure and temptation and selfishness. But no, when we make the choice for love, that's true meaning, and that's true development and evolution.
Yeah. Informed consent. Like, if I'm 14, I can't get a tattoo. You can't get one. You want to know why? You don't really know what you're choosing. You don't really get it. Sorry, I know you think you want one, right? But you don't understand what that really means. So if we just popped up and we were already there to, like, all right, we're already good and we're already full grown, you didn't really you didn't have the freedom to actually choose. And look at, how did Jesus do it? Did he pop in at 33 and ready to no, he was a little baby and he grew into a kid and he had challenges and he got tempted by the devil in the wilderness. That got to make you stop and pause. Why didn't he just come in as a superhero, an action hero, and just do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted? Why walk the very same path that we walk? It must be there's something that's really important. Like, that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true, man.
This is the perfect segue, since this is the Jesus Way podcast, and Swedenborg has the most incredible perspective about the Lord, as he calls them. So can you take us through, who is Jesus Christ and why did he incarnate on earth? What was his mission?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've read what Swedenborg says about it, and I can get you that, but I still feel like I have like a cute little first grade level understanding of this thing that's this infinite mystery. But I will say, yes, if you open up Swedenborg, there's been times when I've come across people who say, well, Swedenborg doesn't talk enough about Jesus. But you got to understand, he'll use the name the Lord for God. And he says early on in his first book, from here on out, I will use the term the Lord to refer to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, in whom is the God in the fullness. So that it's all about Jesus. I don't think there's anybody more Jesus-centric than Swedenborg in history, in terms of a theologian. Wow. And so this is why. To him, Jesus is God himself, the full on, not just like a part of the Godhead, but this is like the real God who has done this incredible thing to rescue the human race from itself, which was to come down and live this human life to stop. We were about to destroy ourselves, and Jesus took on that pain and suffering and challenge to rescue us from ourselves. So the way that he says the stakes were that people have freedom to choose good or evil. Heaven and hell influence the human race. I mean, we already laid out these pieces, right? At the time when Jesus incarnated, everybody was choosing evil. I mean, you go back and you look at the way that the even the people were in that time period in the Bible, in the Old Testament. People were very warlike. It was there was not like human rights or anything. It's just like kill or be killed. And according to Swedenborg, like hell was just filling up because so many people were choosing this life of hatred and revenge and cruelty and dominion. And hell was getting so powerful that it was influencing human minds really strongly. And so it was, he said, total destruction stood at the gates. Like this whole thing could go south because people had been choosing self-centeredness, materialism, evils of every kind, and the way that God used to reach the human race. So this is going to get a little bit in the weeds. The way that God used to reach the human race, that mechanism was starting to not be powerful enough to do it anymore because we had gotten we were so different in character than God is. That it was just like we're starting to speak different languages. So Jesus is God saying, okay, I need to get this hell thing under control. But the problem is, like, there's two problems with that. One is Jesus loves everybody in hell. So because it's all just the people there. So he can't just like, I'm going to destroy them all. I'm going to come in because he's got, and also so God is so powerful that hell just has no power at all. You just can't even, it's like you're going to like, all right, we're going to fly a spaceship into the sun to destroy it. It's just like, so how do you get it so that Jesus could come in and carefully separate out this and reorder it, restructure it, get hell in a place where it can't destroy everyone without destroying the people in hell, introduce a new way for people to connect to God. There was all this complex thing that needed to happen. So the way that needed to happen is God needed to make himself basically attackable. I'm going to find a way that the same things that are attacking all the human race, I'm going to let hell attack me in that same way. And so by Swedenborg says that even though you don't hear about it so much in the Gospels, throughout his whole life, Jesus was going through the kind of struggles that we go through in our lives. And this was like everything that hell tries to attack us with, but amped up. And through that, through walking this like mega version of the path we all walk, he was able to, because unlike us, he's got this divine soul. He could defeat and put in order and clear a path so that by the end of it, you and I, the life we walk today, the reason we can be led by God, Jesus to heaven is because of the work that he did there. So he saved the human race from ourselves and sort of created this new way that now we have a way to understand God clearly, which is like God's a person and God's, and whatever I'm going through, I know you went through something like this. I know that you know that what I'm going through, and I can lean on that, and I can have. It was really important to Swedenborg that you have a picture of God that you can understand, because then you can have a relationship, and you can understand, even though there's all this mystery around Jesus, and there's so much that we can't know every detail or that, but I can get the idea that like, oh, he's a person. Like I could picture him sitting in this chair and like looking at my life and giving me advice. And okay, I can understand that. I can understand a person, and I can understand he would want me to be a certain way. And so by that, the Jesus way, we're following that way. It was God coming down in a way where he can now reach into each of our lives and bring us into heaven and basically overcome the power of darkness. And so he did that initially in this. Time and space aren't really a big deal for God. So he sort of did it then, but is also doing it in each one of us in the same way. So that's about all I know about it. It set the blueprint for everything good spiritual that happens now. And he took on everything that would ever try to attack you, he fought and endured and conquered so that he can now help you through it when you go through it. So
Wow.
I don't know. That's how I understand it.
Wow. A lot of interesting stuff there. It almost gives me the idea that God's been, up in heaven for all of human history, being like, hey guys, repent, love justice, do mercy, walk humbly. We're like, no, we just got to kill these animals, right? That's what you want, right? And all the prophets are coming. They're like, no, mercy, not sacrifice, knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. Yeah, but you want us to kill these goats, right? And just keep on going. And then finally, God just comes down into human bodies. Like, okay, I'm here. Will you listen to me now? Do justice, walk humbly, love mercy, repent. And Jesus just echoes all the same things that the entire Hebrew Bible and the prophets echoed. But now because he's a person in front of us, we can see and touch and hear, we actually listen to him, right? Like there's actually a lot of utility to that I can see.
There's utility. It's concrete. It's something you can understand on a simple level. It's something you can understand on a deep level. It was done for the sake of the word. Like it was, he knew he would be written about. And so now you and I, we never saw Jesus in the flesh, but we can know all about him from this account. And let me add a layer of complexity to it that Swedenborg asserts that you talked about the prophets, and that the prophets were kind of stand-ins for God earlier because they were, as you said, they're playing this role of they're trying to teach, but there's also a representational role that they play. The prophets
they're trying to speak for God. Yeah,
they speak for God, and they do bizarre things. There's a prophet who has to cook food over cow dung. If you just go in the Old Testament, there's a prophet who had to lie on his side for hundreds of days and then lie on his other side. There's a prophet who has to marry a prostitute. There's all kinds of strange things that they do, which is very curious. What does this do for anyone? So according to Swedenborg, there's this thing called correspondences, which are these symbols that the most obvious place you come across them is in the parables of Jesus. This is where he'll say there's a sower who's sowing seed, and no Christians are really thinking, oh, this is agricultural advice. We know that this is about the reception, because for that particular one, Jesus even explains it. But he speaks in parables all the time because that's just an artifact of the Bible. But there's a fundamental way that the spiritual and physical interact, and that is through this symbolism. According to Swedenborg, like the language of correspondences, there's a reason why you dream in symbols and things. There's a reason why people, when they see a sun rising, get this elated feeling. There is a constant display of spiritual truth through physical symbols. So the prophets were symbolizing the way that the human race was treating the revelation from God. So because people were taking these instructions from God and yet still murdering and doing all the things that, so the symbol of that is like, oh, you're cooking this food over this cow dung. And so like that, for that example, there's like this deep, complex symbolism that really meant something. So all these prophets represent, they sort of like do like a installation art that shows, if you knew how to speak that spiritual language, this is the state of the church and people. This is the state of it. So Jesus was the ultimate example of that. He came the Lord was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Like, what does that mean? That he was also a representation of what the human race had done to his Word. And so when he was crucified and beaten and killed by the priests, it was the ultimate representation of the human race has taken these teachings I tried to give you, and they've destroyed them. They've absolutely made them, desecrated them, and killed the goodness that was supposed to be inside them. So one thing Jesus was doing simultaneously was embodying the Word, which had all these consequences afterwards. But that's another thing that Swedenborg says is going on then.
We used to call those prophetic demonstrations in church growing up.
Yeah. What are those?
You can almost you could see the crucifixion like that. Like, oh, you think I'm God? You think this guy's God? Well, God came down and look what you guys did to him. It's like, it's like a big, rude wake-up call. In fact, Bart Ehrman pulls this out in his teachings that the Gospel of Luke, there's absolutely no blood atonement in it. There's no mention of like Jesus died for your sins. It's literally, hey, God came down among us, or God's messenger, the Mashiach, came down and we killed him. So like maybe we should repent and turn our hearts to God and follow this guy's teachings. That's the Gospel of Luke, man. And like most people don't realize that because they're enforcing the blood atonement thing on it. But yeah, it was a prophetic demonstration essentially.
Curtis, what's your take on Swedenborg's understanding of the Trinity and the Father, and Jesus saying like things like the Father is greater than I?
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, very curious about it.
I don't. So personally, I like Swedenborg's explanation, which is that there's one God with different aspects. I could totally see how people get this idea of a trinity of persons, because if you read some parts of the Gospel, it's very clearly like, oh, he's talking to someone and he doesn't know what the Father's going to do. Will you take this away from me? Won't you? This is Swedenborg's explanation of that. There's a couple. One is that God has a trinity if God has a trinity, we have to have a trinity, because aren't we made in the image and likeness of God? So we have a trinity according to Swedenborg. And I know I don't have a trinity. Like, you're interviewing me for this podcast. You're not interviewing my dad. And I would never say that because I was on this podcast, my dad was on it. Yet Jesus says, he who has seen me has seen the Father. My dad's named John. I wouldn't say, oh yeah, John's been on the Jesus Way podcast. We're not the same person. So that can't be the Trinity in us. So there's a Trinity in us. The Trinity is, put colloquially, the mind, body, and actions. Everybody has that. So you have your mind, or you could call it your spirit. This is the part of you that actually makes the decisions, thinks and feels, and is the core of who you are. There's the body, which is, even though we're mediated by cameras here, the body is how you meet someone. You've got to go up and that you can't say like, where's Curtis? You got to be where I am. And then there's the impact of my life. I mean, you go like look around my house. How have I arranged it? What have I done in there? What do I do in my day job? How does that affect people? That you think of, famous people will say, oh yeah, this is in the style of this or that artist, or this is a Ken Burns effect because it's like his documentary. That's the outgoing impact. So to Swedenborg, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is like, the Father is like the soul, the divine essence, the infinite, unknowable. The Son is the part that God has specifically made for us to understand. This is the manifestation that we can know. And then the Holy Spirit is the divine providence, the action proceeding from that, by which God arranges and moves and does everything in the world. So you can talk about them as aspects. What they are not is separate personalities, separate wills, where one could want to sacrifice the other one. So the reason why you have Jesus, though, talking like he talks is the process of the incarnation of Jesus was a gradual one that followed the same process we do. So you have the divine. So each of us has a soul. In the case of Jesus, it's the divine itself, which is the soul. But it comes into, you notice that Jesus didn't just pop up out of a rock. Like Mary got pregnant and I carried him to term. And so he was inside, even though he's a divine soul, he's inside the same human mechanism that we are all in. So over the process of his life, and the reason why he didn't just come out giving sermons at like 3 days old, is that he had what Swedenborg calls a human heredity, like a human side to his mind, like we all do. And it was a slow process of, just like each of us need to grow and shed sort of our ego and come into the life where, God kind of comes through us. He was doing that. So and this was the process of subduing hell, and everything was the process of taking his human nature, which had the same issues that we all have, and coming into that. So Swedenborg says there was 2 states that he would be in. One is called exinanition, and one is called glorification, which is starting to sound like too much theology, but I'll just give you to the end of it. Exinanition, it just means emptying out. So this was the human experience he was in when he was having go through struggles, when he made himself vulnerable so that he could be attacked. And that was when he gets things like he's praying, he's talking to the Father. He's going through what each of us go through. Like, according to Swedenborg and many people, the life that's in me right now is from God. I'm not making life on my own.
Yeah.
However, I have no idea what's going on. I can't even, sometimes I'm like, is there even God around here? Like I'm totally, there's a part of me that's totally isolated from that. So Jesus would have to experience those states if he was really going to walk the path. So by his own power, somehow he can do it, that he gets in these states where he's having to face hopelessness and despair and all these things that we face that the divine infinite can't face because it's too powerful, too knowledgeable. So that's exit-ignition when he's having to deal with that. But then glorification is when he has these breakthroughs, because there's other times when he says, I and the Father are one. All power on earth heaven and earth is given to me. When he's shining like the sun, he doesn't seem like the most stark place you can see it is when people come to arrest him for the crucifixion and they grab him. They say, are you, who are you? And he says something like, I am who I am. And they all fall down. They just fall down like they're dead. If he stayed in that state, can't nobody crucify him. You can't even get close to him. So he had to have this period of vulnerability. So the reason why he's talking like that, that's an appearance based on this process he was going through, where the real trick of the whole Jesus thing is to unite the human and the divine. And what I don't even know if I know what this means, but to glorify the humanity. So now he's the Alpha and the Omega. He's not just, in the infinite, but he's right down on our level in a way that he was before, but not with this much power. That's the way that that's why you have this conversation between Jesus and God that leads some people to think there's separate persons. But Swedenborg says this is just part of the process that he took on for himself.
It's amazing.
Some good Christology, huh?
Yeah.
We often will say in response to like the "Do you believe Jesus was God?" question, my response is, do I believe that God can be limited down to one single human form alone and be absent from everything else? No, of course I don't believe that. I don't think one person can be exclusively God. But do I believe that Jesus was God in the same way that you and I are and every living thing is? Yeah, of course I do. So Jesus, to me, what I'm hearing Swedenborg saying is that God manifests through all of us, of course, because there's only God. It's the only being that exists. But yet, each time we love our neighbor, each time we be of service to others, we demonstrate what God's love is like. It's as if God is incarnating through us in that moment. So it makes sense that humanity being so completely lost. I mean, we've had a rough go of it, let's be honest. Being so lost in sin and selfishness and war and all these things. We might just have needed a true shining example of, hey, here's what it looks like to do that all the time, not just sometimes. Here's what it actually looks like to live in alignment with God's kingdom. Here's what it looks like to actually walk the narrow way permanently. That's something that humanity hadn't really had a lot of examples of up until Jesus. And so he serves as this perfect manifestation of what God is like. Jesus was called the way shower because he showed us the way to God and revealed God's heart toward us. So that's all part of my Christology of like, when you ask me if Jesus was God, I can say yes to that in these types of ways. When you make it an exclusionary thing, I can't agree with you anymore because you're taking away the human element of Jesus that is so needed. We need to, as Swedenborg is saying, we need to be able to relate to Jesus and know that he was one of us. If God did come down, like he actually did fully sign up for the same human experience we did. And in Mark, you very much see that Jesus is tempted and all these things. He tells people not to announce him. And then you get to John, the final gospel. He's never tempted. He goes around announcing that he's God. It's like there's this need to get away from the humanness of Jesus and just emphasize his divinity. But to your point, Curtis, and to what Swedenborg is pulling out in these teachings, you don't get one without the other. If you try to separate them, they have no meaning apart from one another anymore. So the only Jesus that actually means something is a fully human Jesus that fully manifested his divine nature.
Yeah, what is more godlike than to love and be vulnerable, and to actually to put, as we were saying before, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to feel this when I go through it. I'm going to get down. If you like, when like I'll see when our daughter gets sick, and my wife is not at all like, okay, let me make sure I don't get sick here. Like she'll just go right up and she's like taking care, like just like, no, I'm not worried. Like I'm not even thinking about myself. I'm right in there. If you get sick, I'll get sick, whatever. To me, that's more divine. And it's not just even in the Gospels. You think of the book of Revelation, it's like the picture, God is represented by a lamb, which is a lamb is not powerful at all. It's like, okay, we need someone to save us. A lamb. Oh man, like that, like the like lambs are
super lamb.
It's super. They're super cute. They're touching when you see them, but it's like, how's that going to help us? That's something that the human ego doesn't. It's like the light shined in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. The human ego doesn't understand what there's the real power is in love and innocence. Become like a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven. This was not the way Roman mythology was when Jesus came. This is not the way that the human race sees itself. This is God trying to teach you something new. And I'm showing you that no, this is actually the way, is to try to be least. I think that the whole Jesus thing is an ultimate example of you want to see. It's like to your point, if it's like we're a basketball team and our coach is like an NBA player, but all he ever does is tell us how to play basketball, and I don't understand, like, what do you mean post up? Like how do I move my pivot foot? And then finally the coach is like, all right, give me the ball, I'm going to show you. That's what Jesus is. It's like, no, give me the ball. I'm getting on the court with you. I got sneakers on. I have to put it up and put it in the basket. I'm not just telling you how. You could see me do it. You can even come and guard me while I'm doing it. And then you understand it in a way like you never did.
We need that, man. Humanity needs that example. And Jesus said, I have not come to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as ransom for many. And again, always the blood atonement, penal substitution is enforced on that. But it's like, no, he didn't say that. He didn't say, I'm coming to pay a blood penalty so God can forgive you. He said, I'm coming to give my life as ransom for many. So like, could that not just simply mean, hey, I'm going to come down and show humans what God is like, and they're going to get triggered by it and kill me for it. And I know that, but I love them so much, I'm going to come down and show them what God is like anyways. I'm going to give my life as a ransom for many. Like, it could easily mean that. And I think logically, that's the more accurate interpretation of what he was probably saying there. Look, I'm coming to show you all the way to God, but you're not going to like it. I've come to bring not peace, but a sword. I'm going to divide households, man. You're going to find my teachings scandalous and offensive because it's the ways of God are foolishness to man. As you said, the ego doesn't comprehend truth. And so it gets frustrated and triggered and angry. So I think Jesus from the outset knew he was going to give his life for his ministry, his gospel message. And greater love is no man than this. Then he lays down his life for his friend.
I was just thinking of that quote when you started talking, and like I get goosebumps from that quote. Greater love has no one than this. And how could it be that God, if that's the greatest love, it has to be a love that God can display and do. And I think that this gets back to the free will, and like you all can do what you want to do. That's God laying down his life. It's like, I think there's nothing more. And Swedenborg even says that part of Jesus's temptation was just like force everyone to be good, because he sees all the horrors that we're doing to each other and the suffering that we bring upon ourselves. And you think about the way that if you love somebody and you see them suffering, it's actually worse than going through it yourself. Because you know, especially if they're your kids or something, it's like I would take that on 100% of the time. So God's going through that, and there's a temptation to just like, well, just force everyone to be good, but that would destroy what we are, which is we are these beings who get to choose what we are. That's what consciousness is that we have our own life. So this is God saying, all right, I'm going to let you guys really be who you want to be. And that's just like how actual parenting is. You want your kid to live a good life, but you can't just like hover over them. I'm going to let you be who you want to be, even though ultimately God is going to be footing the bill for it, because every bit of suffering, he's going to feel a lot more than we feel. And everyone who doesn't choose the life of heaven, there's more grief for him there. So he's really laying down his life constantly for this whole project. And so Jesus is like a picture of that.
So amazing. And the human element is what really gives it so much meaning. If Jesus was fully glorified in his entire incarnation, then the pain and suffering of a crucifixion and the sacrificing of one's life for his brothers and sisters, it has less meaning. But the human element of Jesus walking into it, the courage, the love, it's just so inspiring and really shows us all the way.
I feel sorry for him. I feel when I think about like before the crucifixion, like I hate anticipating things that are difficult, and I just think if I knew I was going to get tortured and crucified and all that and all the spiritual, I would be so nervous. And I think about poor guy, like he's out. But you think about like that, then I can like, wow, that's really brave. If God never had to experience something like that, then I could point to any number of people who were braver or sacrificed more of themselves than God did. But the God is willing to be like, no, I don't care how much suffering it is. I'm gonna do this for you. That's some love that I can understand. I mean, that changes how I think and feel about God. And again, it's like I can start to, because how would you ever love God, especially if God is just like this super powerful avatar in the sky? I could get like sort of fearing or respecting, but like, where's the love really coming in? I think things like that build up that love. Like, no, that was so cool of you to do. You know what? I think I love you. You know, like that starts to build that.
Yeah. Again, this is what we're talking about. The human element of Jesus brings him to life, makes him relatable, gives us so much more respect and admiration for this man. Like, if you really want to love Jesus, put yourself in his historical shoes and just imagine what it would be like for you to know you're going to be crucified and ruthlessly tortured in a few days' time. And you're still out here in these streets, dropping bars, changing lives, healing the sick. He was still doing these things right up until the Garden of Gethsemane, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I will just close this by saying that it was important for him to say, forgive them for they don't know what they do. Because that was not just, I'm going to go get crucified, but I'm going to remain in love through the whole thing. And according to Swedenborg, it wasn't just like, you know, there's people who like POWs who go through things maybe that are worse than crucifixions. But actually the physical suffering was just one little slice. It was mainly the spiritual suffering. If you've ever had like a spiritual crisis or a dark night of the soul or something, that Jesus was being interiorly tormented and just in ways that are, Swedenborg says, are inexpressible. And yet, even with all that, he still loves even the very people who are doing it to him. That's like just a victory for love. It's love overcoming evil's going to throw everything it has at it, but it doesn't win. Right. That was really important for him to do.
And he overcame all the temptations of the devil. Like, okay, there's these two paths. I could go through with this crucifixion and sacrifice my life for the people I love. Or, you know, the human side of Jesus, the devil is there saying, you don't have to do this. You can just be the king. You can essentially sell out. And him overcoming that is also incredibly inspiring for all of us, because we all have this fork in the road with all of our decisions in life. His was just on a massive scale, but we can always choose good or evil. And evil is very enticing. And like you said, Curtis, it's often less painful on the front end. So we can take that all into our daily walks.
I think from the other side of the veil, when souls are choosing to come in, you know, they're choosing their incarnation, there's probably certain things that are known. And one of them is probably like, what are some of the biggest catalysts that a human lifetime can bring, right? What's the most good, the most awakening that one can do in a human lifetime? Well, I don't think I can think of anything more than a truly good, honored, divine person being killed unjustly. It's like that kind of wakes people up more than anything does. You know, we just saw it with Charlie Kirk. It's like most people didn't even like or listen to Charlie Kirk, but because he was overall like a good man who believed in what he was teaching, boom, the whole world's so upset and up in arms about his unjust assassination. It galvanizes people in a very unique way. And you just have to imagine Jesus was aware of this. And he's like, look, if I want to reform this temple system that has destroyed my father's religion that he gave to Moses, like I have to give my life for it. It's the only thing that has enough power to actually cause change. And so to your point, James, like, yeah, Jesus probably had, any one of us would have probably talked ourselves out of that predicament in some way. We would have rationalized it. Let me just do a couple miracles and slip off to Syria. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's like, like it looked good on paper, but
Yeah,
now I'm here. Whatever. I mean, he must have known what he was doing, because it sure did the trick. Like, here we are.
Here we
It's
are. Yeah.
2,000 years later. Actually, and we're in an era where you can have electrons zooming across the Earth and making the internet, and yet still there's more Christians in the world today than there's ever been in history. And
Yeah.
even though there's a decline in some countries in the Western Hemisphere, although that could be overall worldwide, you can't just have any idea do that. Like, this is why even people who don't believe in Christianity are kind of like, well, why is it so sticky? Like, what is going? How did you do that? He knew the right combination of factors to just have this thing be a juggernaut in the human psyche. And still, but people, I feel like even the YouTube trajectory over the past 15 years since I got on was like, Christianity is about to die. Actually, this is not that great. Let's go back and see what's up with Christianity. It's just like, you just can't leave it alone, because I don't know, there's something to it. So whatever he did worked.
And even outside of Christianity, there's a billion Muslims who revere Isa as a prophet. I mean, he's revered in many Eastern religions as well. So it's truly billions of people look up to Jesus as, if not God, then at least an amazing prophet, an incredible inspiration.
Something else, like, so Swedenborg talks, about Jesus as being like the divine human. And to him, that even before there was Jesus incarnated on the earth, there were still people who worshiped Jesus. Anybody, he gives a definition, like, anytime you're worshiping like God as a person, that's, you're essentially like, you're thinking about Jesus. So I think that there's plenty of people that, what you just mentioned, who, if you think of God as like a person who has moral precepts that you should follow, you have more in common than you might think. And that Swedenborg talks about a divine providence is behind the rise of all religions. So it knows what it's doing, and it'll have different kinds of religions spring up that are suited to different kinds of people in different places in the world, and it'll have the teachings that mesh there, but that give people the right framework that it leads them toward heaven. So he got to heaven and saw Muslims in heaven. He saw Jews in heaven. This is just like there's a bunch of programs God has instituted in the world to get people to do the essentials of religion, which is to not do evil. Like, don't have something analogous to the 10 Commandments that tells you, like, don't do that stuff, and then believe in a God who is like the source of what's good, and then try to live a life in accord with that. Like, that's the main thing. That's like, you show that to the bouncer, and he's like, all right, you can come in. Whether or not you get, like, if you have really good treatment, maybe you get like a better box seat or something, because but the main thing is, like, that's what it is to have heaven in your heart. And when you have heaven in your heart, the truth stuff you can get sorted out. There's plenty of education and learning. It's really about, like, love. Do you try to do good? Have you put that into your life? We can work with that. He has a quote. It's a quote in his book, Divine Providence, or no, Divine Love and Wisdom, that says, in the other world, the life we go to after this one, nobody asks what your religion was like. They ask what your life was like. And I think that it's hard to deny that's got to be how it is.
That's just got to be how it is, man. What a great ending note, man. Well, Curtis, dude, what a masterclass on Swedenborg you just gave us. Thank you for enlightening us with all of Swedenborg's incredible teachings. I know that's just a snippet of them, but I really think you're the guy, man, to break down Swedenborg, because it's so intellectual and dense, and you understand the density of it, but then you bring it to the simplicity, and you just have these fantastic analogies, and you're a great lateral thinker. So thank you for joining us today to give us all the blessings that Swedenborg has to offer. And please let our audience know where they can learn more about you and get involved with your work, man.
Well, I want to say thanks so much, guys, for having me on. It's so cool to get to be here. So the reason I love Swedenborg is I feel like that's where those teachings for me is where I've most clearly met God. Like, I think a lot of people have, like, but I just feel like I have so needed those teachings in my life. Like, they just, like, I've so needed them. And so I feel just like very grateful to get to pass it along. Like I have definitely needed help. I'm trying to be a part of bringing that help to other people. And I see what you guys are doing in the world as a great tool to bring people close to God as well. So I'm just happy to get to be a part of this. If anyone's looking for me, man, just search Swedenborg on YouTube. I mean, there's not that many people making videos about it. Our channel is called our channel is called Off the Left Eye, which that's a reference to a spiritual experience Swedenborg had where he was being shown what it's like to awaken in the afterlife. And it's a symbolic appearance that a covering is taken off the left eye because the left side is the intellectual side. It's like the introduction of truth. So that's what that's all about. You just come there, leave a comment. We'll find you, and hopefully we can give you something that will help you on your journey.
Nice.
Incredible.
Man.
Everyone, you are in for a treat when you go to that channel. It's endless content that has absolutely transformed my life and just so fascinating and interesting. And Curtis and his co-host Jonathan, amongst others, are just, they're the best. So y'all are in for a treat. Thank you so much, Curtis. We really appreciate you. God bless you, brother.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Thank you, James. Please check out Curtis's YouTube channel, Off the Left Eye, and enjoy more of the Swedenborg gems that he has to offer. And until next time, guys, you know what it is. Get out there and love God and love people. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Jesus Way podcast. Shalom.